things that seem insignificant at the time, but actually are great big things. We're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of the Small Town Pastor Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This is Ben Beckner. Thank you so much for listening and joining me on this journey. Well, once again, we do thank you for tuning in and listening and joining me on what is this actual journey of what God is doing in small town ministry. And I entitled this podcast episode, "The Small Things," because sometimes we think that things are small, but the dividends and the things that happen as a result are actually quite big. And so I want to share a few things from this week, and that's actually happened over the last couple of weeks as well, that at the time seemed maybe small or, I don't know, insignificant, but just really sensed God, telling me something in those moments about the small things and what those actual big things are. And so just want to share a couple of things from the last couple of weeks and just kind of take you on this thought process of what's been happening. So some of you might know that I've actually started driving the school bus as part of, it's been a couple of things. I mean, you got three kids in college, and a little extra money is helpful. So there was that part of it, but also hoping to have another way to make some more impacts into the community, meet more people and things like that. So been doing that for the last few weeks. And as a result, getting to know different people and different things, and had a conversation, actually was, I don't even know if I would even call it a conversation. It was in the afternoon. Several of us were walking towards getting ready to get in the bus to drive over to the school and start our afternoon routes. And this lady that I've met, and she's a Christian and knows that I'm a pastor here at a church in town, she asked me, it was a question that kind of caught me off guard, and I'm not sure why. Mostly because I think there's no quick or easy answer to it. But she asked me, what is God showing you about our current days? And she asked me that as we're walking to our buses. And I was just like, I don't even know how to begin to answer that in these few seconds we've got before we get onto the buses and stuff. And she's like, well, I know that that's kind of a loaded question, or, not an easy one to answer. So I'll let you kind of sit on that, and I'll follow up with you. And it's really stuck with me the last few days. This question, what is God showing me about our current days? And as a pastor of a church, man, there is a lot going on in our current world. Things that are happening in our society, and there are no easy answers. There's no quick answers. And there are no answers that seem to be, unfortunately, unifying for us as Christians. Typically, those type of questions seem to be trying to gauge somebody's stance on some of these different things happening around us. So this, what seemed like kind of a small question initially, and I think that was her intent, actually turned out to be something quite more, because, still kind of wrestling with this. And this is a question that's been, I guess, rolling around in my heart and my mind, not since she's asked it, but even before. How do you begin to answer those type of things? And oftentimes there's a question behind the question. That question that she was asking, I don't know, but usually those type of questions are ones that are leading questions. There's other questions behind that. Your answer to that is one that they are using to ask other questions. And so as pastors, navigating our current world and finding people on all different sides of so many issues that we're facing as a country and that we're facing as a church, answers to those type of questions are kind of hard and difficult. And maybe I'm reading more into the question than she was asking. But thinking about it since, that's kind of where my mind has gone, I've noticed a lot of disunity within the body. I've noticed a lot of disunity among Christians on all kinds of these issues. And so this question she asked, what is God showing me about our current days? I think that would be the biggest thing that I would answer, is that there is just so much disunity, even on the things that we should be unified about. And that's where my heart has been. However, a couple weeks back, we have a ministerial alliance here in town. And it's, it's a smaller group. I mean, there's only a handful of churches here in town. But there are, I think, three or four churches out of, I think, the 8 or so that are in town that are not a part of this. And for various reasons, they've been invited, and we've tried to extend invitations and conversations without any interest, and that's fine. So this small ministerial alliance that we've been meeting since I've been here and been a part of, and we many months back had this desire, had this idea to have this outreach event. And this outreach event was designed to, obviously partner our churches together and to be unified in the one thing that we can unify about, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ, and to make people aware of who Jesus is and invite them into this relationship with him. And so we've been planning this outreach event for many months and had a date on the calendar, and we're working towards getting that done. Through the process of that, we actually, invited the neighboring town to be a part of this as well, their ministerial alliance. And as the days got closer and decisions needed to be made and plans needed to be finalized and all of this, it was an amazing thing to see a total of 10 churches come together, 2 ministerial alliances come together to pull off one event. That was the biggest thing that I took away from the event. I mean, it didn't, wasn't as well attended as we had hoped, and different things. We have our own ideas of what these things should look like, and it didn't hit those things. But trusting that God and his hand was upon this from the very beginning, we had to look at other things. What was God up to? And thinking back to this question that was asked of me here just the other day, and thinking back to recent events, and where my heart has been is, seeing this disunity in the world at large, but also, within the Christian community, followers of Jesus, this disunity of so many things. Seeing that event come together and being pulled off in such a way that it was successful, as far as people coming together, doing the work, being faithful to what God had asked us to do. There was unity, and it was such a great thing. And so I'm kind of rethinking some of that. I mean, I still am seeing that, and I still feel that there's so much disunity around us, that I was just greatly encouraged by that time together with my fellow pastors and other church leaders, coming together in this way. It was a unifying thing. We came together, and I think God was glorified. The praise team that came was made up of at least 3 or 4 different churches. Just the different details that had to come together, everybody pitching in and being a part. It was such a good thing. And so the biggest takeaway as we have met since was that this was no small thing. This event, even though it didn't produce the results we'd hoped, produced something that I think is going to be greater in the longer term, which is we have partnerships now. 10 other churches have come together in a significant way to see something happen. And so where do we go from here? What does God want us to do with this unity that's been formed between us? And so, was just really encouraged in that. And so I don't know. I'm looking forward to some good and better days in this area of an area where we have seen and experienced a division, and I'm encouraged by the way things are coming together. So that was, as I entitled this podcast, "The Small Things." That's one of the standouts. The other ones here in the last couple weeks, we, as part of our worship service, we sing together and all of that. But one of the things we've been hitting on is driving this theme of we as a church body are a family of believers. And as a family, we come together and we share things with one another. We go through things throughout the week and in our lives that it is good for us to share those things with one another, to know that we're not alone, that we're being prayed for, and we can encourage one another. And so it's a beautiful part of what we do, and it's been really cool. This last couple of Sundays, obviously we have smaller kids in our services, and during that, there's been a couple of times when some of our younger kids have shared some prayer requests, and I don't know what it is about that when a young kid shares a prayer request that, man, it just really moves and touches me, and sometimes I think we view those prayer requests as something that's maybe small. So some of the prayer requests have been, pray for my hurt tummy, pray for so-and-so who's sick, and things like that. And those are, man, they're just such, in many ways, profound prayers, because on the surface they seem small. But in their minds, this is something huge. They don't have any reason to believe that God can't or won't act or respond on those prayer requests. And so I was just reminded of that again this last Sunday. So that was one of the prayer requests, is, praying that God would heal this Jackson, his hurt tummy. And then another one by Willow, which is another small girl in our congregation, and she was just thankful for her family. And as I heard that, and then later as we were praying for that, I was just struck with, I sometimes take for granted those things, the small things that we ask God for, but are huge things. And in praying for us to be thankful for our families, I was just thinking of my family, my girls who are away at school, my extended family. I haven't seen my mom in over 2 years. It's been a while since I have seen my dad as well, and was just in that moment thankful for my family as well. And I think it's those small things on the surface that sometimes have these great ripple effects in our hearts and lives, and the ways that God sees these small things. If we can respond in faith in lifting a prayer request that seems small, it touches the heart of God. And I was just so encouraged by that this last Sunday. The small things that actually have much bigger effects in our lives. We make small decisions throughout the day, and we don't always realize it. Small conversations that we have with people, chance encounters, with someone as we're walking to a bus, encounters in the grocery store, waves to one another on the street as we're driving. Those are small things on the surface, but we don't always understand or see these great ripple effects that they can have. And so I've just become aware of those things again this week. And I'm just so thankful. Another one that I want to share with you. So there's a young man that's been going to our church as well. And in finding out who he is, it was surprising that he was there. And then it was encounters and conversations over the course of a few weeks as he had come around and stayed around. Got to pray with him here a couple weeks back for him to accept the Lord. He wanted to accept Jesus into his life. He wanted to follow Jesus, and he was tired of the way things were in his life, the mess that things had been, and wanted and needed something different. And so just having those conversations before being able to build a relationship got us to a point where he grabbed me after service and said, I just need to talk to you about this. And so in having this conversation, being able to draw on the encounters we had before, opened up the door for us to be able to trust one another and for him to trust me ultimately with things that were going on in his life, and knowing that God could do something about it. So it's just a beautiful thing. And just rejoice. Again, I was just reminded of this. I rejoice now in these small things. Times that we think that these are insignificant, these are things that don't matter, these are things that aren't going to count for anything. But they really, really do. And we can't neglect the small things. We can't think that these don't matter, because they do. So just want to challenge you and encourage you this week. Encourage you in these small things, these things that we feel like are insignificant. But we're discovering that they are far from that they are significant, and that God moves in those small things. The small things touch his heart, and we need to be aware of those things too. They're not insignificant. And so even though we may find ourselves, the title of this podcast is a Small Town Pastor Podcast. We have this idea that small things happen in small towns, but I was just reminded again this week, these are big things. So be encouraged. Don't discount the small things, the undercurrent of what happens in those small things. Who knows what can unfold? And so be encouraged. Thanks for listening and joining with me on this. Pray that you're blessed.